Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction, John. I wonder if I can make this work.
No, yeah, you're more successful than I was.
Yay! An honor to be here, especially at this panel. If you haven't read Chris's paper, please read it before you read mine. My paper is available online. It's part of this conference idea of sharing our preprints in advance, so always open to feedback. My name is Vassilis. I have a PhD in Science and Technology Studies from the University of Edinburgh, and I've been conducting what is known as an historical sociology of artificial intelligence. My background chapter turned into document analysis, so it became an empirical chapter. So that consists of history, and I was also interviewing AI experts, some more historical figures, some more recent ones to compare views about AI then and now. So I've been delving a lot. I've been also teaching a course called Internet and Society for 4 years now. So I've been reflecting a lot on the history of the internet on one hand and the history of AI on the other. And the more you delve into this history, especially the mainstream histories, and I'm all about diversifying the histories of AI and the internet, but I think there's reason to look back into the mainstream histories and how they were written, how the victorious people have written those histories. So the more you delve into this kind of history, you see big names shaping the metaphors that we use, the language that we use. And the argument I bring about is that if we look, it's quite interesting that many of the previous speakers have been linguists or interested in literary theory and French language and so on. So my argument is that technology history starts with linguistic choices. And that reflects the latest work by Thomas Kuhn that has been almost published before he died. So I'm interested in hype and how hype is created. Now, hype is a relatively recent term. It hasn't been used, for example, in the 70s, in the 60s. But if you start studying hype has always been there, hyperbole, right? So the way people convince each other, the way people persuade people to get research funds, and that's where Chris's paper becomes very relevant in terms of convincing people about your own model, about your own version of history. And I'm saying that some of these metaphors that we decided to use are quite bad linguistic choices, essentially, because they distort from technological advancements, what an earlier speaker termed as small-scale innovations. Small-scale innovations happen at the same time, but hype distorts us, diverts our attention from them. So we like our dichotomies, we like the idea of the summer and the winter, we like the idea of the analog and the digital, we like the sort of companion, sort of the AI as a companion, we like the idea of connection and the two of them being distinct, we like natural, artificial, right? We like this kind of thing. But I say history doesn't really know these dichotomies, right? And a little theoretical hint to give you, the AI winter as opposed to the AI effect. The AI effect, some of you might have heard of, is a folk theory about AI history. Every time AI achieves something, it's not considered to be AI anymore. It's getting a different conference, a different journal. The history of connectionism is such a history. Essentially, neural networks have been around for a long time. The idea has been there since the 50s or even the late 40s, McCulloch and Pitts, but it was eventually took off recently. Now, my paper is pretty much a response to this model. It's a paper I really like. It's a very short one, 3 pages, but the author is making a very compelling metaphor. He says that every time there is an AI winter, there is a human-computer interaction summer. So we're getting tired of machines as companions. We want to connect with them, right? We want to immerse ourselves into virtual realities and so on. We kind of saw that during COVID. In COVID, everything was about virtual reality and the new version of the Google Glasses. The COVID finishes, then we have AI again. We have AGI again, like from the 90s. But then my argument is that let's look at this from a linguistic perspective, and let's look at these small scale innovations. And I'm not going through all the details I have here. The papers there, you can read them. One of the argument goes back to packet switching, and the way time sharing was used for AI research in the 80s. So much of what became known as the internet was used between AI professionals in order to communicate with each other. So the internet was essentially a byproduct to create artificial intelligence in the Strategic Computing Initiative in DARPA. You can also look at the work of Lynn Conway, probably the first openly trans person in the history of computing, very large system integration, and her statements about the role of interneted connection and interneted intelligence through time-sharing platforms. In parallel, 1980s, connectionism sort of took off with Geoffrey Hinton and his colleagues producing some very important, influential papers. But interestingly, what we now consider AI is the connectionist approach. Although, because Hinton wasn't offered a postdoc at the University of Edinburgh, and people didn't consider his approach to be called AI, he essentially rebranded the term, called it neural networks and so on. So it's a very distinct field. And it's very interesting to me that now he's considered to be one of the godfathers of AI through the media. So step two, I guess. Yep.
Could you take to the left a bit so that you're in?
All right, yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that. Time to be closer to the slides.
Perfect.
Thank you. So step two, Web 2.0. Who remembers Web 2.0? Some people remember it. Some people might be too young to remember. Some people might be too old to remember. I'm a Web 2.0 generation. So everything on the web was about sharing, bottom up instead of top down. And that was all about the IT, information revolution, information superhighways. We're going to build up the web, and so on. If you read the initial papers that the initial scientific papers that led to contemporary deep machine learning, they don't refer to AI at all. They cite some of the classics, some of the Minskys, some of the Hintons, but they don't cite artificial intelligence as a term. They do cite Web 2.0. So for them, it was Web 2.0 that brought about this kind of revolution. It was the pre-big data revolution. So with big data, then we have this enabling of Hinton's algorithms and verbose. In the 80s, they were called hedonistic algorithms because they were based on hedonism, the sort of Epicurean sort of punish or pleasure kind of approach. And the third step, contemporary AI, where I think from AI we go back to the I guess properties of the internet. I was surprised to see that within the first couple of months of ChatGPT's launching, it was initially used for web searches. So people were disillusioned by Google's sort of advertisement-led kind of approach. And because ChatGPT, at least for now, seems to be advertisement-free and seems to carry on this sort of objectivist kind of knowledge that seems to be very balanced and, as Elon Musk called it, woke. I don't agree with the term. So it seems that people are using it as a sort of authoritative one-hit search engine, which takes us back to that question about what is the internet for? What is AI for? Is it about memory? Is it about search? Is it about whose memory? Is it about power? Is it about politics? And so on. And I have coined a term in the paper. I call it expuntations. I essentially treat that sort of small-scale innovations as an egg and spoon race. So you're the person in the middle of that picture. and you're slowly carrying the spoon with the egg, and you're surrounded by images of hype, of linguistic choices that try to divert your attention. But you're there, you fight for your own research funds, your own research grants, you want to find a job for you, for your children, you want to build your reputation, your career, and you keep going. So this tension between hype and history is something that can be useful in the future. And that feeds into scientific motivation and things that Chris will talk to you about later on. So thank you very much. That's me. And have questions?
Okay, thanks very much. Chris, can I invite